In the heart of America, small towns like Ridgewood seem untouched by time. Neighbors greet each other by name, doors stay unlocked, and life follows the familiar rhythm of church bells, school runs, and Friday night football. But beneath the calm surface of Ridgewood, Ohio, a secret waited, a secret that would end one young woman's life and shatter a community's trust. Tonight on Twisted Case File, we explore the heart of America's small town. Behind the quaint charm and neighborly smiles, some of the darkest secrets are buried. This is one such story, a shocking case that tore a peaceful community apart. Ridgewood began as a railroad stop in the 1880s. Today, it's a town of teachers, factory workers, farmers, and shopkeepers. People here talk about the Ridgewood way, a mix of hard work, church on Sundays, and helping your neighbor when times are tough. Ridgewood's small, but we're proud of it. You walk into the diner and everyone knows what coffee you drink. It's that kind of place. You never expect big city crimes here. The biggest headlines are usually about the high school football team or a bake sale. Sarah Whitaker was Ridgewood's bright light. At 28 years old, she worked as the town librarian and spent her weekends organizing literacy programs for children. Friends describe her as warm, ambitious, and deeply rooted in the community. Sarah had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. She'd remember your birthday, your favorite author, even your dog's name. She loved this town. Born and raised in Ridgewood, Sarah had returned after college, choosing a quiet life over the lure of the city. But that decision, some now say, placed her in the path of someone who would end her life. Friends and colleagues describe Sarah as conscientious and compassionate. She rented a small apartment above the Main Street bakery and walked to work each day. On weekends, she visited her parents, James and Linda Whitaker, at their farmhouse on the edge of town. She called every night, even if it was just for a minute. We were close. We still can't believe she's gone. Sarah was also dating, quietly. Few knew of her relationship with Daniel Moore, a 35-year-old contractor who worked odd jobs around town. Their connection was discreet but intense, and as investigators would later discover, complicated. In Ridgewood, gossip travels fast, but some secrets remain hidden until it's too late. Behind the cheerful facade of town life, tensions were building. A series of anonymous notes left at the library unsettled Sarah. Phone calls with no one on the other end began late at night. She confided in a friend but brushed off their concern. She told me she thought someone was following her, but then she laughed and said maybe she was just being paranoid. I wish I'd taken it more seriously. On July 12, 20XX, Sarah Whitaker finished her shift at the library and walked home as usual. It was a warm summer evening. By dawn, she would be dead. What happened over the next 12 hours would forever change Ridgewood. In the coming acts, we'll retrace that night, the investigation that followed, and the secrets that emerged. Secrets that proved even in America's quietest corners, darkness can lurk just beneath the surface. July 12th began like any other summer evening in Ridgewood. The sun dipped behind the water tower, cicadas hummed in the trees, and residents settled into their nightly routines. For 28-year-old Sarah Whitaker, it was the last normal night she would ever know. At 8:55 p.m., security footage captured Sarah leaving the library and heading to her apartment above the bakery. Her coworker, Grace Allen, was the last person to see her alive. She waved and said, "See you tomorrow." She seemed tired, but nothing unusual. I never imagined that would be the last time I saw her. Witnesses later told police they saw a dark sedan parked across from the bakery around 9:30 p.m. The engine was running. No one knew who was inside. It was odd. We don't get much traffic that late. The car just sat there. At 10:47 p.m., a chilling call came into the Ridgewood 911 center. 911, what's your emergency? There's a lot of noise upstairs, banging, screaming. Please hurry. The call came from a tenant living below Sarah. Police were dispatched within minutes. Officers Mark Sullivan and Tasha Reed arrived at 10:53 p.m. They found Sarah's apartment door ajar. Inside, they discovered signs of a violent struggle. It was chaos. You could see she'd fought hard. Despite immediate medical attention, Sarah Whitaker was pronounced dead at the scene at 11:07 p.m. The cause, multiple stab wounds. Ridgewood's innocence was gone. By morning, word of Sarah's death had spread throughout the town. For many, it felt unreal. Interview clip, local reporter, voice actor. It was like something out of a nightmare. People were crying in the diner. Everyone wanted to know who could do this. Detectives found no sign of forced entry, but recovered several crucial pieces of evidence: a torn scrap of fabric, partial fingerprints on a glass, and a cell phone that did not belong to Sarah. We immediately treated it as a homicide. Whoever killed her likely knew her. The grainy footage of a dark sedan leaving the area at 11:10 p.m. would become the first major lead. Detectives began piecing together a timeline of Sarah's final hours, a timeline that pointed to someone she trusted. In the days that followed, the investigation into Sarah Whitaker's murder would reveal a web of secrets and betrayals. At the center of it all was a man named Daniel Moore, a contractor with a hidden past and, as police would discover, a deadly motive. In the hours after Sarah Whitaker's death, Ridgewood's familiar streets were transformed into a crime scene. For the town's small police force, it was an unprecedented challenge, and for detectives Carla Ruiz and Anthony Bell, the beginning of a relentless pursuit of justice. Detectives worked methodically. They photographed every inch of the apartment, bagged potential evidence, and interviewed neighbors. The details were grim: multiple stab wounds, no sign of forced entry, and the victim's personal effects, wallet, phone, keys, undisturbed. It told us she knew her attacker. We were looking at someone close to her, not a stranger off the street. Among the evidence, one item stood out: a cell phone left behind at the scene. It wasn't Sarah's. Inside were text messages, deleted but recoverable, that hinted at a volatile relationship. We pulled fragments of texts that suggested jealousy, threats, and arguments about money. The team began by interviewing those closest to Sarah: co-workers, friends, and family. Most were cooperative and heartbroken, but one name kept surfacing: Daniel Moore. We all knew she was seeing Daniel. It wasn't a secret exactly, but it wasn't public either. She told me they argued a lot. She'd been thinking of ending it. Daniel Moore, 35, was a local contractor known for his carpentry skills and easy charm. He'd done repair work at the library where Sarah worked. Publicly, he was a devoted father of two, separated from his wife but still involved with his kids. Privately, police learned he had a history of volatile relationships. We weren't ready to call him a suspect, but he quickly became a person of interest. Investigators pieced together Sarah's final hours. Witnesses saw Daniel's truck near Main Street at 9:30 p.m. Cell phone records placed him less than half a mile from her apartment at the time of the murder. His story didn't add up. He told us he was at home watching TV, but his phone was pinging off a tower downtown. The cell phone left at the scene turned out to be a prepaid burner, but digital forensics tied it to a series of calls made from Daniel Moore's personal phone. One text, sent just hours before the murder, read, "We need to talk tonight. No more running." That was our first big break. It placed him there, emotionally charged, right before Sarah died. Detectives also obtained footage from a gas station camera 2 blocks away. At 10:35 p.m., a dark sedan matching Daniel's was seen driving toward Sarah's apartment. Minutes later, it was gone. On July 15th, 3 days after the murder, Daniel Moore voluntarily came to the station for questioning. What began as a conversation quickly became a confrontation. He was calm at first, said he loved Sarah, would never hurt her, but when we confronted him with the phone records, he got defensive. Reenactment: Daniel slamming his hand on the table saying, "I wasn't there." As rumors spread, Ridgewood's residents grew restless. Candlelight vigils were held outside the library. Flyers demanding justice for Sarah appeared on utility poles. The pressure on police to solve the case intensified. People were scared. They wanted answers. This was no longer just a tragedy, it was a crisis of trust. On July 19th, the state crime lab confirmed what detectives suspected. Daniel Moore's DNA was on the torn fabric recovered from the scene. The sample matched him with a 99.98% probability. That was it. We had him physically at the scene. Combined with the phone evidence, we had probable cause. On July 20th at 6:15 a.m., Daniel Moore was arrested at his home without incident. Neighbors watched in shock as the man they knew as a handyman and father was led away in handcuffs. I just stood there. My kids played with his. I couldn't believe it, but the arrest was only the beginning. As prosecutors prepared their case, a disturbing motive would come to light. A story of jealousy, betrayal, and a secret affair that had spiraled out of control. Daniel Moore's arrest sent shockwaves through Ridgewood. For many residents, it was unthinkable that the mild-mannered contractor who built their decks and repaired their roofs could be accused of murder. "He fixed my porch last spring. He was polite, friendly. I never imagined." On July 22nd, Daniel Moore made his first appearance before Judge Karen Lowry. The courtroom was packed with journalists, residents, and Sarah Whitaker's grieving family. You could feel the tension. Everyone wanted to hear what he would say. Prosecutors charged Moore with first-degree murder, aggravated assault, and tampering with evidence. He pleaded not guilty. "We will prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Daniel Moore deliberately took the life of Sarah Whitaker." As documents were unsealed, a clearer picture emerged. Text messages showed that Sarah had tried to end the relationship. Financial records revealed Daniel had borrowed money from her and was under pressure to repay it. Witnesses described escalating arguments. The motive was a mix of jealousy and desperation. When she tried to leave, he snapped. Jury selection began in late September. 12 residents of neighboring counties were chosen. The trial opened with powerful statements from both sides. The prosecution painting Daniel as a jealous lover turned killer, the defense portraying him as a man wrongly accused. It was a classic battle of narratives. The evidence looked strong, but the defense kept hammering on the lack of eyewitnesses. Over 2 weeks, the jury heard from dozens of witnesses, friends, coworkers, forensic experts. The most emotional testimony came from Sarah's mother, Linda Whitaker, who described her daughter's final phone call. She sounded scared. She said Daniel was angry, and she didn't know what to do. That was the last time I spoke to her. The prosecution's key evidence, Daniel's DNA on the torn fabric, his fingerprints on a glass, and cell tower records placing him near the scene. A crime lab analyst explained how the data linked him to the apartment at the time of the murder. It wasn't just one piece. It was everything together, the timeline, the DNA, the phone. The defense argued that the relationship was tumultuous but not violent, suggesting someone else could have been in Sarah's apartment. They questioned the integrity of the evidence and highlighted the lack of eyewitnesses to the stabbing itself. My client is being framed by circumstantial evidence. He grieves for Sarah as much as anyone. On the morning of October 14th, closing arguments concluded. The jury deliberated for just 6 hours. Daniel Moore was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. We'll never get our daughter back, but at least there's justice. For Ridgewood, the verdict brought relief but not closure. The town had lost more than a beloved librarian. It had lost its sense of safety. We're trying to heal, but it's going to take time. Evil came to our town, and we're still grappling with that. The story of Sarah Whitaker's death is more than a tale of one crime. It's about how trust can be betrayed, how small communities can be shaken to their core, and how people find ways to rebuild after tragedy. With Daniel Moore convicted, Ridgewood tried to return to normal. But for many, life would never be the same. Sarah Whitaker's murder had torn open the fabric of a community built on trust. In the weeks after the trial, residents held vigils, memorials, and town meetings. They created scholarships in Sarah's name and organized book drives for local schools, small acts of kindness to reclaim what was lost. She loved books, she loved kids. We thought the best way to honor her was to keep that spirit alive. For Sarah's parents, the verdict was only the beginning of a long road of grief. They've since become advocates for domestic violence awareness, speaking at local colleges and community centers. We don't want another family to go through what we did. If sharing Sarah's story saves even one life, it's worth it. Daniel Moore now serves a life sentence without parole. In letters to the court, he maintains his innocence, but for Ridgewood, the case is closed. It's not unusual for convicted offenders to deny responsibility, but the evidence here was overwhelming. Over time, Ridgewood has begun to heal. New safety programs have been implemented. Neighbors check in on one another. But the memory of what happened to Sarah Whitaker lingers, a cautionary tale about trust and vigilance. We learned the hard way that even a small town isn't immune. But we also learned the strength of our community. The story of Sarah Whitaker is not just about one crime. It's about how secrets can fester, how warning signs can be missed, and how communities can come together after tragedy. In every town, large or small, there are untold stories. Some are uplifting, some are dark. American Murder, Secrets of a Small Town shines a light on those hidden corners. Not to sensationalize, but to understand. If you or someone you know is experiencing threats, stalking, or domestic violence, please contact local authorities or the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Help is available. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, share with friends, and also subscribe.